Okay, let's unpack this. We are so incredibly glad you could join us today because the stack of sources sitting in front of us right now is just, well, it's unlike anything I have ever seen.
It really is a genuine mind bender.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
right.
we read a lot of political theory on this show. We analyze a lot of complex economic proposals, and we certainly dive into our fair share of, philosophical and religious texts.
Right.
But it is exceptionally rare, perhaps completely unprecedented in our experience, to find all of those distinct genres colliding at high speed inside a single document.
Absolutely. The document in question is a blog post and manifesto. It's dated March 9, 2026,
Okay.
and it's titled, "This is not an ordinary electoral victory." It was published on a site called Democracy for Nepal. The author is Paramendra Kumar Bhagat.
Right, and we should mention,
Just to give you a sense of the voice we were dealing with right out of the gate,
yeah.
the site includes this highly specific biographical claim.
Oh, yeah, the 200,000 number.
Exactly. It states that the author is the, quote, only full-timer out of the 200,000 Nepalese in the U.S. to work for Nepal's democracy and social justice movements in 2005 to 2006.
It's very specific.
It is. We are immediately introduced to a narrator who positions himself as deeply committed and historically rooted in Nepali democratic movements.
But viewing it all from the outside?
Yes, viewing the entire situation from an international diaspora perspective in the United States.
And this isn't just a standard political essay either. I want to make that clear to you listening. This is a full-blown multimedia, multilingual experience.
That's a huge production.
Yeah, the author published this manifesto in English, Nepali, and Hindi simultaneously. And on top of that, and this is the part that genuinely stopped me in my tracks, the source material includes a complete set of lyrics for a revolutionary anthem.
The soundtrack to the revolution.
Exactly. The anthem shares the title, Not an Ordinary Victory, and the text explicitly dictates the musical direction. It is intended to be set to a 2-hour continuous mix of Arabic deep house and Oriental techno.
Which is such a specific vibe.
It really is. We have the lyrics in both an all-English version and a blended Nepali and English version. The level of detail regarding how this message should be consumed is just staggering.
So, our mission for today's deep dive is to guide you through this extraordinary text.
Let's do it.
We are going to analyze a comprehensive blueprint that starts off sounding like a fairly recognizable modern Gen Z political revolution.
Very policy-heavy at first.
Right. But then it abruptly pivots into one of the most radical macroeconomic overhauls you'll ever encounter.
A total teardown of the system.
And if that wasn't enough, it ultimately culminates in a grand synthesis of ancient spiritual prophecies.
That's where it gets truly wild.
It explicitly brings together biblical figures and Hindu avatars to explain modern-day political maneuvering in Nepal.
Now, with a text this wide-ranging and, quite frankly, explosive, we need to lay down a quick ground rule for today's discussion before we jump in.
Yes, we need to offer a firm but polite impartiality disclaimer to you, the listener.
Very important.
This deep dive contains highly charged political claims regarding global superpowers, as well as very specific, strongly worded assertions about political factions, leaders, and movements within Nepal.
And obviously, the religious interpretations, too.
Right. It weaves in intense religious and theological interpretations of both Christian and Hindu texts.
So, to be perfectly clear,
We want to emphasize that we are strictly acting as your guides to the provided material. We are not endorsing, validating, or taking sides on any of the political, economic, or religious views presented here.
exactly, we're just looking at the text.
We are simply exploring the ideas, the rhetoric, and the frameworks exactly as they are laid out in the author's manifesto. Our goal is to understand the mechanics of what the text is arguing, not to judge its ultimate truth or ethical standing.
With those ground rules set, I want to look at the inciting incident of this whole manifesto. Let's jump into Section 1, the Gen Z Revolution and the Global Corruption Critique.
The starting line.
Right. The text starts with a massive paradigm-shifting event. The author is describing a recent electoral win in Nepal, but insists repeatedly that this is not an ordinary electoral victory.
Hence the title.
Yeah, it's not just about the raw numbers, and it's not even just about the fact that they supposedly secured a massive 2/3 majority. The author frames this entire political moment as the second chapter of the Gen Z revolution.
And what's fascinating here is the absolute clarity of the movement's primary demands.
Zero corruption.
Exactly. According to the text, the first demand of this Gen Z revolution was, and still is, a completely corruption-free country.
Which sounds great on paper, but
But the author frames corruption not as a minor political annoyance or a tax on doing business, but as an existential systemic threat that has universally baffled humanity.
he argues that there is currently no corruption-free country anywhere in the world.
Nowhere.
Right. It's presented as the ultimate unsolved global equation, a puzzle that every other nation has completely failed to figure out. And he certainly does not hold back when looking at the rest of the world to prove that point. He systematically critiques the global superpowers to establish this baseline of universal failure.
Starting with the neighbors.
First, he points to Nepal's massive neighbors, stating plainly that neither India nor China is corruption-free. And when talking about China, the text makes a highly specific point about President Xi Jinping.
This part is really interesting rhetorically.
It is. The author notes that Xi's very first agenda upon becoming president was a sweeping anti-corruption campaign. The manifesto uses a potent rhetorical question here.
The fire metaphor.
Yes, quote, "Where there is no fire, why would there be talk of putting it out?" End quote. The author points out that even in China, a nation where corrupt officials can literally face the death penalty, the problem of corruption persists.
If we pause and analyze that specific critique, it forms a crucial part of the author's underlying philosophy.
How so?
He is establishing that the ultimate deterrent state-sanctioned execution is completely insufficient to stop corruption.
Because people still do it.
Exactly. If the threat of death cannot prevent an official from taking a bribe, then the problem cannot be solved by merely increasing the severity of the punishment.
Right, but the author reserves his harshest, most sweeping critique for the United States.
He really goes after the U.S. here.
Oh, the critique of the U.S. is intense. The author outright labels America as the most corrupt country in the world.
He doesn't mince words.
Not at all. He goes as far as to claim that the scale of corruption in the United States is so vast that if you took the remaining 100 countries on Earth and combined their corruption, they still couldn't match the U.S.
And he ties that directly to the national debt.
He does. He points specifically to the national debt, accusing the U.S. government of placing $1 or $2 trillion of debt on the backs of future generations, while the money itself, in his words, simply disappears.
Which leads us to the structural argument that underpins the entire first part of this manifesto.
The system itself is broken?
Exactly. By looking at the failure of the death penalty in China and the massive debt accumulation in the U.S., the author concludes that simply punishing bad actors does not work.
You can't just arrest your way out of it.
No. The core thesis here is that human behavior isn't the primary variable that needs changing. The system itself is structurally flawed. The author writes, quote, "Punishment alone does not stop corruption. The right structure is needed."
The right structure.
Yes. He is arguing that corruption is a built-in feature of modern global economies, not a bug. Therefore, you cannot police your way out of it. You have to rebuild the financial machine completely from scratch.
Now, when I read the part about needing an entirely new structure, my mind immediately went to the logistical nightmare of trying to invent a new economic system out of thin air.
It's a massive undertaking.
But the author claims the heavy lifting is already done. That brings us to Section 2, the Kalkiwadi Research Center's 3 economic pillars.
The blueprint.
Right. The author introduces an institution called the Kalkiwadi Research Center with incredible reverence. He describes it as the absolute only institution of its kind in the entire world that actually holds a blueprint to make a country completely corruption-free.
It is a sweeping claim, and the blueprint itself is equally audacious. It rests on 3 distinct macroeconomic pillars.
Let's break them down.
Because they represent a total dismantling of standard global capitalism. Pillar number 1 is a completely cashless economy.
Now wait, this isn't just about tapping a card, right?
No, this isn't just about the convenience of using your phone to buy coffee. The author views physical cash as the literal lifeblood of corruption.
It's the mechanism of the crime.
Exactly. If we look ahead to the song lyrics provided in the text, they poetically describe this cashless system as being clean like rain, ensuring there is no dark money running through the veins of the nation.
No dark money, meaning every single transaction leaves a permanent digital footprint.
Every single one.
I can see how that eliminates the classic briefcase full of unmarked bills, but it also raises massive questions about surveillance and state control.
It does, but the author seems entirely focused on the transparency aspect of it.
Fair enough. Then we hit Pillar 2, which is where the economics get truly radical.
The banking shift.
Yes, the text demands 100% government bank ownership.
100%.
Every single bank in the nation of Nepal must be owned by the government of Nepal, no private banking whatsoever.
And Pillar 3 completes the triad, which is zero interest.
This one is hard to wrap your head around.
It is. Banks would not pay interest on deposits, nor would they charge interest in the traditional sense.
So if we synthesize these three pillars, a cashless society, exclusively state-owned banking, and the elimination of interest, we see the author's structural solution to corruption really taking shape.
In this proposed system, capital cannot be hoarded in secret because there is no cash. It cannot be leveraged, speculated upon, or hidden in private, profit-driven financial institutions because the state owns all the banks.
And the zero interest part.
Wealth cannot passively generate more wealth simply by sitting in an account because there is no interest.
I really want you, the listener, to try and imagine a modern economy operating like this. Imagine waking up tomorrow and every private bank you've ever known is gone.
Replaced by a single state entity.
Exactly. Your cash is suddenly useless paper, and the entire concept of an interest rate, the foundation of modern investment and saving, has been erased from the financial dictionary.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
And the author believes this highly controlled, centralized structure is the only way to eliminate corruption structurally.
But the author doesn't stop at merely preventing corruption. These three pillars are actually the foundation for something much more immediate and tangible for the average citizen.
Which brings us to Section 3.
The radical nationalization of essential services. Building on this new banking structure, the text makes a staggering promise to the populace.
The timeline here is what's so striking to me. The author says this new structure will provide every citizen and every family with high-quality education, healthcare, and legal services completely free of charge.
Free across the board.
Yes, but he emphasizes over and over again that this is not some distant 10-year utopian plan. He says this happens today.
Right away.
He writes, quote, "Even in the current economic condition, the people will receive this immediately, not after the country becomes twice as rich, today."
Which naturally leads to the most pressing question.
How on earth do you pay for it?
Exactly. How do you pay for the sudden nationalization of three massive sectors of the economy without instantly bankrupting the nation?
Right, because if the government just buys every hospital and school outright, wouldn't that trigger massive crippling inflation?
And that's where the author introduces this fascinating closed-loop financial system. This is the mechanism of purchase that relies entirely on those three pillars we just discussed.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Walk me through this loop.
So the text states that the government of Nepal will indeed buy every single private hospital, school, college, and law firm in the country.
Okay, a massive purchase.
And they will do this using funds generated from their newly monopolized government-owned banks.
So they just print or allocate the money.
The internal logic of this plan lies in what happens the exact moment after the sale.
Right.
The government uses the money from its banks to buy these private institutions. The private owners sell their assets and receive massive financial payouts.
They get their money.
They get their money. But because of Pillar 2, the 100% government bank ownership, the only place those sellers can possibly deposit their new massive wealth is right back into a government bank.
Because there's literally nowhere else to put it.
Exactly.
It's a closed loop. The money flows out of the government bank to buy the asset, and because there are no private banks and no cash to stuff under a mattress, that exact same money immediately flows right back to the government bank as a digital deposit.
The text puts it this way, quote, "The former owners receive their payment, but the financial system remains within the national system."
It's essentially the government moving money from its left pocket to its right pocket. They acquire all of the nation's essential infrastructure in the process without actually losing any capital from the national ledger.
That is the structural theory they are operating under. But it is vital to note the author's nuanced view on the private sector here.
Right, because this sounds a lot like total communism at first glance.
It does, but this isn't a call for total Soviet-style state ownership of every single business or industry.
So restaurants and factories stay private.
Yes. The author explicitly states that the private sector is necessary for job creation and that under this new banking system, there will be no shortage of capital for private enterprise.
So they are drawing a hard line.
The mandate is simply that the private sector must be completely 100% removed from three specific non-negotiable domains: education, healthcare, and legal services.
And the logic behind targeting those three specific sectors is deeply empathetic to the working class.
It really focuses on the day-to-day struggle.
The author explains what we can call the wealth effect. He argues that people are incredibly resilient. They are, in his words, somehow managing to eat and survive already.
Right, the basics are being met through hard work.
But what crushes them? What keeps them in poverty? The text argues it is the exorbitant costs of education, sudden healthcare emergencies, and legal disputes that break people's backs financially.
Therefore, the argument goes, if you suddenly remove the financial burden of schooling, medical bills, and legal fees, you effectively make every single family wealthy overnight.
It's an instant wealth transfer.
You don't need to double their salary or hand out massive stimulus checks. You just have to permanently eliminate their three most devastating, unpredictable expenses.
The disposable income of the average family skyrockets instantly. Okay, so we've eliminated corruption structurally with a cashless, interest-free society. We've nationalized essential services through a closed-loop banking system, and we've made every family functionally wealthier by removing their biggest burdens.
That's the foundation.
What happens next? We move to Section 4, the 20% growth goal, and the Poland-style cleansing.
With this new baseline established, the text sets unprecedented macroeconomic targets. The author claims that under this new system, Nepal will achieve a sustained 20% economic growth rate for 10 consecutive years.
To put 20% in perspective for you, the listener, we have to look at global economic history.
It's a huge number.
It is. The text is quick to point out that this is an achievement no country in the world has ever managed.
Consider China's economic miracle as a benchmark.
Right.
During the absolute peak of China's unprecedented economic boom in the early to mid-2000s, a period of rapid industrialization and export dominance that completely reshaped the global economy, their growth rate hovered around 10 to 14%.
And that was historic.
It was. The author of this manifesto is suggesting that Nepal will not only beat that, but nearly double the greatest economic expansion in modern human history and sustain it for a full decade.
And what's the end game of that growth?
He projects that this 20% growth will allow Nepal to skyrocket into becoming a fully developed nation, specifically boasting that Nepal would achieve this status before their massive neighbor, India.
But there is a massive catch.
There always is.
Before this utopian economic engine can be turned on, the author insists that a brutal prerequisite must be met. There must be a cleanup.
A very specific kind of cleanup.
Yes, he uses a very specific historical analogy for this, calling for a Poland-style cleansing.
We really need to unpack what a Poland-style cleansing actually means because it carries immense historical weight.
What happened in Poland?
After the fall of communism in 1989, Poland didn't just transition to a free market. They implemented what are known as lustration laws.
Lustration laws.
Yes. Lustration was a process of aggressively purging the old guard. It involved investigating politicians, civil servants, judges, and police officers to see if they had collaborated with the former communist secret police.
Okay.
If they were found to be collaborators, they were stripped of their positions and banned from public office.
So it was a deep clean.
It was a systematic dismantling of the deep state of the previous regime to ensure they couldn't sabotage the new democratic and capitalist structures.
And the author is applying that exact same logic to modern Nepal. He is identifying a deep state enemy that must be purged.
Who does he target?
He targets what he calls the syndicate networks of the corrupt oligarchic system. According to the manifesto, these syndicate networks haven't just influenced politics from the outside, they have fundamentally infiltrated the core institutions of the state.
They are inside the house.
Exactly. He says they have placed their people everywhere, specifically naming the police force, the bureaucracy, and the judicial courts.
And the text demands actionable, aggressive steps to dismantle this syndicate, mirroring that Polish lustration.
So not just an election.
No, it's not just about voting the corrupt politicians out of parliament. It demands that decades-old corruption files be ripped open, that sweeping legal action be taken against embedded bureaucrats.
And what about the money they've stolen?
Crucially, it demands that the new government aggressively coordinate with foreign nations to track down and recover all the dark money and stolen assets that these oligarchs have hidden abroad over the years.
It's a vision of a total institutional reset. And the author views this not just as a necessary policy measure, but as a moment of profound national destiny.
A turning point.
Yes, he writes, "This is a new dawn. This is a sunrise." And he uses a very powerful phrase, declaring this moment the trumpet call for Nepal to become a Vishwaguru.
For you listening, the term Vishwaguru translates roughly to a guide to the world or a world teacher.
It's a huge title.
It is. It's a concept deeply rooted in South Asian philosophy. It implies a nation that achieves such a high state of moral, spiritual, and structural perfection that it becomes the ultimate template for the rest of humanity to follow.
So it's not just local politics anymore.
The ambition laid out here isn't just to fix Nepal's economy, it's to elevate Nepal into the moral and economic beacon for the entire globe.
Which is an incredible setup. We've spent a significant portion of this deep dive exploring what sounds like a radical, perhaps Marxist utopian banking thesis mixed with aggressive anti-corruption purges.
It's a lot of intense policy.
But this is the exact moment in the source material where the author pulls the rug completely out from under us. We arrive at Section 5, the pivot to religious revolution and the enigma of Balen.
This is where things take a massive turn.
Just as you wrap your head around closed-loop banking and lustration laws, the author adopts this line, quote, "But the economic revolution is only the first stage."
The text explicitly states that the macroeconomic overhaul we just detailed will be immediately followed by a religious revolution.
And this is where the narrative shifts jarringly from structural economics to hyper-personal ancient mythology.
The text introduces us to a central figure named Balen.
Right.
The author describes Balen with a sense of awe, calling him the man who set Singha Durbar on fire.
Now, for listeners unfamiliar with Nepali political geography, Singha Durbar is a massive palace complex in Kathmandu. It houses the Prime Minister's office and most government ministries.
The seat of power.
It is the absolute seat of Nepalese governmental power. It's the equivalent of Capitol Hill and the White House combined. So saying Balen set Singha Durbar on fire is a potent metaphor for unleashing massive, disruptive, establishment-shaking political change.
But the text goes even further.
Yeah, it claims Balen is a man whose words carry literal divine power, that when he speaks, reality bends to his will.
Now, every revolutionary hero needs a villain, or at least a stark conflict to overcome.
Right.
The text details a specific, vicious political attack launched against Balen by the Old Guard. It mentions that a political rival's cyber army, specifically identifying Oli's cyber army, launched a massive smear campaign.
Just to provide context here, KP Sharma Oli is a towering figure in Nepali politics. He has served as prime minister multiple times and is a major leader of the communist faction.
Exactly. And the text claims that Oli's faction used their online network to brand Balen as a demonic figure.
They went hard negative.
Very hard. They actively tried to label him Lucifer and equated him with Ravana, the multi-headed demon king from the Hindu epic Ramayana. They said he represented a fundamental demonic tendency.
Now, you would expect a politician to vigorously deny being called Lucifer or a demon king.
That would be the standard PR move.
But instead of fighting the label, Balen leans into it in the most modern, internet-native Gen Z way imaginable. The text recounts this amazing anecdote.
It's such a striking visual.
A teenager straight up asks Balen in public, "Are you Lucifer?" And to amuse this kid, Balen styles his hair up into two distinct horns, takes a photo of himself, and posts it on his social media.
He just owns it.
The text interprets this as Balen essentially saying, "If you are happy calling me Lucifer, then fine, I am Lucifer." It's a playful, viral, almost mocking acceptance of the opposition's smear tactic.
And if we connect this to the broader themes of the manifesto, this is where the author's synthesis of meme culture and ancient theology becomes incredibly profound.
How does he connect a hair horn selfie to prophecy?
The author takes this playful social media moment, a politician making hair horns for a kid,
Right.
and pivots it instantly into serious biblical prophecy.
Oh, wow.
The text references the final book of the Christian Bible, the Book of Revelation. The author claims that Revelation prophesies that Lucifer will shake a nation.
Shake a nation.
The author then asks the reader a direct question. Who is the one playfully claiming the title of Lucifer? And who is the one currently shaking the political foundations of Nepal?
And the answer is obviously Balen.
The answer, the author suggests, is Balen.
So, in this framework, Balen is Lucifer, but not as a force of eternal evil. Rather, he is a prophesied force of necessary national disruption. He's a wrecking ball meant to smash the corrupt old system.
That's exactly how it's framed.
And that brings us to Section 6, the 666 connection and the arrival of Lord Kalki. because the author is far from finished with biblical numerology.
Not even close.
The text introduces an even wilder claim. It states that the Bible says Lucifer has an elder brother, and that elder brother's name or title is 666.
This is perhaps the most startling conceptual leap in the entire manifesto. The author takes the number 666, universally recognized in Western theology as the number of the beast, and attempts to identify this figure in the real world.
Living and working right now.
Living and working in modern Nepal.
And the author reveals that 666 is none other than Jay Saw.
The architect.
Right. Remember him from Section 2. Jay Saw is the founder of the Kalkiwadi Research Center. He is the brilliant architect of the 3 economic pillars, the cashless, interest-free, state-owned banking system we spent so much time dissecting.
But the author doesn't stop at biblical numbering. Having established Jay Saw as the elder brother, 6666, the text dives deep into 5,000-year-old Hindu scriptures to explain his true nature.
He's mixing traditions here.
Seamlessly. Specifically, the author references the Kalki Purana and the Bhavishya Purana. For context, these are ancient Sanskrit texts that deal heavily with prophecy and the cycles of time.
The yugas.
Exactly. According to Hindu cosmology, we are currently in the Kali Yuga, an age of darkness, sin, and deep corruption.
Which ties perfectly back to the corruption critique in Part 1.
It does. The scriptures prophesy that at the end of this dark age, the god Vishnu will incarnate on earth for a final time as Lord Kalki.
And what does Kalki do?
Kalki is depicted as a warrior on a white horse who will draw a blazing sword to destroy the corrupt rulers of the earth and usher in a new golden age of truth and righteousness.
So the author makes the ultimate theological claim here. He states that the ancient scriptures contain 12 specific prophecies regarding the arrival of Lord Kalki, and that 11 out of those 12 prophecies are already demonstrably fulfilled in this one mortal man, Jay Saw.
The theological math the author uses here is staggering.
It really is.
By declaring Jay Saw, a modern macroeconomic policy designer, to be the literal living incarnation of Lord Kalki, he places this man in the exact same divine lineage as Lord Rama, Lord Krishna, and Lord Buddha, who are all previous avatars of Vishnu.
He elevates an economist to the status of a living god, tasked with ending the age of corruption.
Which sets up Section 7 perfectly.
The rebirth of Lakshmana and the burning of Singha-Durbar. Because the author has created a puzzle that needs solving.
The family tree.
Right. If Jay Saw is the elder brother, and Jay Saw is Kalki, who is an incarnation of the god Rama, then what does that make Balen, the younger brother who playfully accepted the name Lucifer?
The author synthesizes all these disparate mythologies, Christian eschatology, modern meme culture, and ancient Hindu epics, into a single, cohesive family tree of political revolution.
It's incredibly intricate.
If the elder brother Jay Saw is the incarnation of Lord Rama, the text asks, who is the younger brother?
The text provides the mythological titles. Balen is declared to be Lakshmana. In the Hindu epic, the Ramayana, Lakshmana is the fiercely loyal, highly aggressive younger brother of Rama who follows him into exile and wages war against the demons.
A warrior figure.
And the text also declares Balen to be Balarama, the powerful older brother of Krishna from the Mahabharata epic. And finally, he is named as the human incarnation of Sheshnag.
To understand the weight of that last title, we have to look at Hindu cosmology.
Who is Sheshnag?
Sheshnag is the cosmic, multi-headed serpent upon whose coils the god Vishnu rests while floating on the cosmic ocean. When Vishnu incarnates on Earth as an avatar like Rama or Krishna, Sheshnag is said to incarnate alongside him as his brother, as Lakshmana or Balarama, to serve and protect him.
Wow.
The author is taking these profound, universe-spanning mythological relationships and overlaying them perfectly onto 2 modern Nepali political figures.
And then he brings this soaring cosmic mythology crashing back down into the physical reality of Nepali politics with a final, brilliant metaphor.
Bringing it back to the fire.
Yes. He notes that in the ancient lore, it was Lakshmana who is known for his fiery temper and destructive capability in service of the divine plan. The text concludes with this line, quote, and it was Lakshmana who burned Singha-Durbar.
He ties the ancient epic directly to the modern political disruption. Imagine how powerful it is, as a listener and a voter, to be part of a political movement that takes your modern, chaotic, Gen Z political frustration and recontextualizes it as the literal, precise fulfillment of ancient multi-religious destiny.
You aren't just voting for a new banking policy or complaining about corruption.
No, you are participating in the climax of a 5,000-year-old holy text. It elevates political action to the level of cosmic necessity.
But the author didn't just write this grand synthesis down in a dry essay. He wanted people to feel it in their bones.
Which brings us to the music.
Yes, Section 8, the soundtrack of the revolution.
As we mentioned at the very beginning, the author provides lyrics for an anthem titled Not an Ordinary Victory, intended for a 2-hour mix of Arabic deep house and Oriental techno.
Think about that auditory vibe for a second. Deep, pulsing, hypnotic electronic beats combined with ancient, swirling Oriental instrumentation, all serving to drive a complex political and theological manifesto straight into the listener's subconscious.
It acts as a brilliant pedagogical tool.
How so?
It's a mnemonic device. It's designed to make the dense macroeconomic pillars and complex theological arguments of the manifesto catchy and unforgettable.
Let's break down how this song functions, because if we look at the lyrics verse by verse, we see the entire essay translated into rhythm.
Starting with the chorus.
The chorus reinforces the core identity of the movement. It sings about Gen Z writing Chapter 2 and making corruption-free the absolute mission from the start.
Verse 1 dives right into the geopolitical critique we discussed earlier.
The global failure.
Yes, it literally says, quote, India? China.
Yeah.
That problem's still on America, drowning in debt like a sea, trillions on tomorrow that the future got to pay the fee.
It even calls out Xi Jinping's anti-corruption campaign in rhyme.
It does. It says, she came in saying, we fight corruption today, but if there's no fire, why the smoke in the way? It is wild to hear high-level international policy critique structured as pulsing techno-hip-hop.
Then verse 2 tackles the Kalkiwadi economic pillars. It turns what could be a dry white paper on banking policy into poetry. Quote, 3 pillars standing like mountains. First, cashless economy, clean like rain, no dark money running through the veins. Third, no interest draining the soul of the land.
It makes the concept of a highly regulated, state-owned, interest-free economy sound epic, natural, and entirely inevitable.
Then we get to verse 3, which is where the beat drops, and they demand the political purge. Quote, clean the system like Poland did before, when the old regime fell and the people roared, hidden wealth coming home after years of flight.
And finally, verses 4 and 5 transition into what we might call spiritual hip-hop.
In the mythology verse.
Exactly. It recounts the viral moment, saying, kid asked him straight, is that who you are? He laughed, made horns, posted it on the bar.
And then it pivots into the grand cosmic prophecy.
Quote, 11 fulfilled in a living man, Jasa, standing with the cosmic plan. Lakshmana's fire in the Ramayana page. Shishnag rising in human skin.
What's truly genius about this is the trilingual reach. The source gives us these lyrics in a pure English version, but also in a mixed Nepali and English version.
It's a very deliberate strategy.
The author is deliberately designing this highly localized, highly specific Nepali revolutionary ideology to be broadcast outward. He is targeting a global, internet-native, techno-listening Gen Z diaspora audience.
Built to go viral.
Built from the ground up to go viral on platforms like TikTok or Instagram Reels.
As we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a breath and look at the incredible journey this text has taken us on.
It's been a ride.
We started with a very recognizable modern Gen Z demand for a country with absolute zero corruption.
To achieve that, the text proposed building a massive, cashless, interest-free, 100% state-owned banking economy that immediately nationalizes all health, education, and law through a closed-loop system.
It demanded a post-communist style purge of the deep state to unlock an unprecedented 20% economic growth rate.
And then it revealed that the architects and enforcers of this entire plan are the literal living incarnations of biblical demons and Hindu deities.
This raises an important question, especially for you, the listener, who might be sitting half a world away from Nepal right now. Why should you care about this specific manifesto?
What's the takeaway here?
The answer lies in the evolution of modern political communication. In our current age of massive information overload, where attention spans are fractured, political movements are realizing that dry policy papers, economic charts, and traditional stump speeches simply aren't enough to mobilize a massive generation.
Especially Gen Z. You have to capture their imagination. You have to give them a story that feels bigger than themselves.
What this author has done is masterfully fuse radical macroeconomic populism with viral internet meme culture like the playful hair horns and incredibly deep, resonant, ancient religious mythology.
It's a totally new formula.
By combining these seemingly disparate elements, the author isn't just asking for votes in an upcoming election. He's trying to create unshakable, cult-like enthusiasm. He is attempting to turn complex economic policy reform into a literal holy war against corruption.
We want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day. If a blueprint for an entirely new economic system requires its architect to be viewed as a literal godlord Kalki, and its political enforcer to be viewed as a demon-turned-demigod Lucifer or Lakshmana, just to gain traction and be heard through the noise of the internet, what does that tell us about the future of global political discourse?
It's a massive shift.
Are we officially moving away from the era of the technocrat, the boring official with the spreadsheet arguing over fractional interest rates, and entering a new era where only those who can successfully claim divine, cosmic, or prophetic destiny will have the sheer cultural power required to actually reshape the economic structures of the world? It's something to think about. Until next time.